she was dismissed the moment she stepped into the will reading. A gray linen dress, a faded cardigan, and quiet flats, just enough to draw sneers across a room full of polished airs, their grins too sharp to be sincere. A man in a gold tie was the first to speak, half laughing, half mocking. "Is that the maid?" A young woman tilted her head and whispered into her friend's ear, probably some sad ex-mistress looking for a payout. Ivy Clark stood at the back of the room. She didn't answer, didn't flinch, just adjusted the strap of the cloth bag in her hand. Because to them, she was just a shadow, an outsider, who had wandered into a room meant for blood, legacy, and status. But they were wrong because the woman they just humiliated was the legal wife of the man they were all here to inherit from. And today's reading of the will was a test she helped design. The Thorne estate sprawled across a wooded hill, its stone walls and iron gates, a fortress against the world. Inside the grand hall smelled of old money, polished oak, leather, and the faint tang of roses from vases that cost more than most people's rent. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, catching the April light and scattering it across a crowd of 42 relatives, investors, advisors, assistants, each one dressed to claim their stake in Logan Thorne's empire, tailored suits, silk dresses, diamonds, that winked with every gesture. They milled about sipping champagne, their condolences as rehearsed as their smiles. Ivy slipped in quietly, her flat, silent on the marble floor. She chose the back corner near a tall window that framed the misty hills outside. Her dress was simple, loose enough to move in, the gray fabric soft from years of wear. Her cardigan, a pale blue that had seen better days, hung slightly off one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun, a few strands loose, framing a face that nay. She didn't look at Clara or Elise, didn't acknowledge Preston's taunt or Marissa's barb. She stood still, her breathing even, her gaze fixed on the empty chair at the front where the lawyer would sit. To them, her silence was weakness, a sign she didn't belong. They couldn't see the steel beneath it, the way her stillness held a room without trying. The crowd grew louder as more arrived. A former investor, Gerald Hayes, in a pinstriped suit, muttered to his wife, "Logan always had strays hanging around. This one's got no business here." His wife, dripping in emeralds, nodded, her eyes raking Ivy's outfit. "No class," she said, her voice a stage whisper. "She's embarrassing the family just standing there." A distant cousin, Trevor, in a velvet blazer, called out, "Hey, sweetheart, kitchen's that way." He pointed toward a side door, grinning as his friends clapped him on the back. A woman in pearls, Lillian, an aunt twice removed, clucked her tongue. "Really? Someone should escort her out before the lawyer gets here. It's disrespectful to Logan's memory." Marissa, her crimson dress swishing with every step, crossed the room toward Ivy, her heels clicking like countdown. She stopped inches away, towering over Ivy's smaller frame, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You're in the wrong place, darling," she said, her voice loud enough to draw every eye. She reached out, flicking Ivy's cardigan as if it were trash, her nails grazing the fabric with deliberate disdain. "This isn't a soup kitchen. Why don't you leave before you embarrass yourself further?" The crowd watched, some smirking, others whispering, none stepping in. Ivy's hands stayed steady on her bag, but the invasion of her space felt like a violation. Marissa's closeness a calculated threat. A cousin nearby muttered, "She's got some nerve staying." And the room's approval of Marissa's aggression was palpable. They are silence complicit in Ivy's humiliation. Ivy didn't move. Her eyes flicked briefly to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. She knew it was live, feeding to a private server only 2 people could access. One was her. The other wasn't here. Not yet. As Grayson prepared to read, Trevor slipped behind Ivy, his velvet blazer brushing the wall as he whispered to his friends, "Watch this." He pulled a cocktail napkin from a nearby table, scribbled charity case and Sharpie, and tucked it into the strap of Ivy's bag when she wasn't looking. The room noticed, snickers spreading like wildfire as people pointed at the note, its bold letters a brand on Ivy's back. Clara snapped another photo, her laughter barely contained, while Elise whispered, "She's a walking joke now." Ivy stood unaware, her focus on Grayson, but the crowd's glee was electric. Their amusement a knife twisted in her dignity. Trevor leaned back, grinning as Lillian muttered, "Serves her right for showing up like that." The prank wasn't just cruel. It was a spectacle designed to make Ivy a fool for daring to exist among them. The lawyer, Arthur Grayson, entered at precisely 10 a.m., his gray suit crisp, his briefcase heavy with secrets. He was older, 60-some, with a face carved by decades of handling, fortunes and feuds. The room hushed as he set his briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a single, sealed envelope. No flourish, no preamble. He adjusted his glasses and scanned the crowd, his gaze pausing on Ivy for a fraction of a second, long enough to unsettle Preston, who frowned and whispered to Marissa, "What's that about?" Gerald Hayes stood, his pinstriped suit creasing as he pointed at Ivy, his voice booming like a judge delivering a verdict. "This woman's a fraud," he declared, his finger trembling with indignation. "Logan would never let someone like her near his estate. She's here to scam us, plain and simple." The room buzzed with agreement, heads nodding, eyes narrowing at Ivy as if she were a thief caught red-handed, his wife, her emeralds glinting, heavy, turning Ivy into a criminal in their minds. Her presence an offense they couldn't tolerate. Ivy's gaze remained steady, but the weight of their judgment pressed down. Each word a lash, meant to strip her bare. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their outrage a performance for each other. Ivy's silence only fueling their need to tear her apart. Grayson cleared his throat. "That we're here to read the last will and testament of Logan Alexander Thorne, executed 3 years ago and verified as authentic." Murmurs rippled through the room. 3 years. Logan had vanished only 6 months ago. His private jet lost over the Pacific. No wreckage, no body, just a void that fueled headlines and greed. Most assumed he'd died. Most hoped. Preston straightened his tie, his smirk returning. "Let's get to it, then. Who gets the keys to the kingdom?" Clara leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping her phone, already planning her victory post. Gerald crossed his arms, muttering about stock options. Lillian clutched her pearls, whispering to Trevor about the summer house in Nice. Ivy stayed still, her bag now resting at her feet. She watched Grayson's hands as he broke the seal, the crack of wax loud in the quiet room. The crowd leaned in, their breathing shallow, their eyes hungry. This was it. The moment they'd dressed for, schemed for, flown across continents for. Logan's empire, tech, patents, real estate, a biotech firm worth $90 billion, was up for grabs, or so they thought. Grayson unfolded the paper, his voice steady but deliberate, each word a stone dropped into still water. "I, Logan Alexander Thorne, being of sound mind, declare this my final will. To my family, colleagues, and associates, I leave nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth." The room froze. Preston's smile faltered. Clara's phone slipped an inch in her hand. Gerald's jaw tightened, his wife's emerald sue. Denly heavy. "Nothing, it had to be a mistake," Grayson continued unfazed. "All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, and intellectual rights are bequeathed to one person. The one who stood by me for no reason other than love. The one who never asked my net worth, never sought my name for status. My wife, Ivy." A gasp tore through the room, sharp and jagged, heads whipped around, searching for a face that matched the name. Preston barked a laugh, short and disbelieving. Wife, Logan wasn't married. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth. Her crimson nails stark against her paling skin. Clara's eyes narrowed, darting to Elise, who mouthed, "What the hell?" Gerald stood his chair, scraping the floor. "This is absurd. Logan never mentioned a wife. It's a scam. Someone's forged the damn thing." Lillian clutched Trevor's arm, her voice shrill. "She's not here, is she? Some gold digger we've never met stealing what's ours?" Grayson held up a hand, silencing them. "The will is legal, signed, and notarized. Supporting documents, marriage certificate, photographs, personal letters are available for verification." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a folder. He opened it, revealing a photograph, Logan, younger, laughing, his arm around Ivy in a simple white dress. Standing outside a courthouse. The date on the back read 7 years ago. The room erupted. Preston slammed a fist on the table. "This is insanity. Who is she?" Clara stood, her phone forgotten, shouting, "Where's this Ivy? Show her." Trevor sneered. "Probably some con artist hiding in Bice." Marissa's voice cut through, venomous. "If she's real, why is she not here? Too ashamed to show her face." Ivy stepped forward. The movement was quiet, deliberate, like a tide turning. Her flats made no sound, but every eye followed her as she crossed the room. Her cardigan swayed slightly, her linen dress catching the light. She stopped beside Grayson, her posture straight, her face calm. The cloth bag hung from her shoulder, unassuming like her. The silence was deafening. Preston's mouth opened, then closed, his gold tie, Sue. Phone. Gerald sank back into his chair, his wife's emeralds dull now. Lillian's pearls seemed to choke her, her hand frozen mid-gesture. Grayson nodded to Ivy, a faint respect in his eyes. "Mrs. Thorne," he said, handing her the folder. She took it without a tremor, her fingers steady as she opened it, glancing at the photograph, her lips curved, just a hint, as if remembering the day it was taken. Then she closed the folder and faced the room. "I didn't come for the money," she said, her voice clear, low like a bell through fog. "I came to see who you were. Who among you cared for Logan as a man, not a bank account, who'd mourn him, not his fortune?" She paused, her hazel eyes sweeping the crowd, pinning each one without effort. "You showed me exactly who you are." Preston found his voice shaky but defiant. "You're saying you're his wife? You?" He gestured at her dress, her cardigan, his laugh forced. "Logan Thorne, married to this. No offense, lady, but you look like you shop at thrift stores." Ivy didn't blink. "I do," she said simply. "Logan didn't care. He loved me for me, not for what I wore or what I owned. Can any of you say the same?" Clara snorted, folding her arms. "Nice act, but I'm not buying it. If you're his wife, where's the proof? A photo is not enough. Anyone can fake that." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, emboldening the crowd. Gerald nodded, his voice loud again. "She's right. We need more. Witnesses, records, something real." Grayson opened his briefcase again, pulling out a stack of documents. Marriage license dated 7 years ago, signed by both parties and 2 witnesses, a nurse named Sarah Ellis and a librarian Michael Reed. Personal letters from Logan to Ivy, handwritten, verified by forensic analysis, bank records showing joint accounts kept private at Logan's request, and he paused, pulling out a small USB drive, video footage from their wedding. He inserted the drive into a laptop on the table and a screen on the wall flickered to life. The room held its breath as grainy footage played. A courthouse steps. Logan in a simple suit. Ivy in a white dress. Both of them laughing as they kissed. Sarah and Michael stood nearby, clapping. The date stamp matched the certificate. The crowd's defiance crumbled, faces paling, eyes darting to Ivy, who watched the footage with a quiet ache in her gaze. Marissa stood, her voice trembling with rage. This is a setup. You planned this, didn't you? Tricking us into what? Looking bad. You're nobody. Logan would never marry someone like you. Her words stung, but Ivy's face didn't change. She let Marissa's anger hang in the air, unanswered. Then she spoke, her voice, colder now, sharp enough to cut. You're right about one thing. This was planned not to trick you, but to test you. To see if any of you cared enough to ask who I was before you mocked me. To see if you'd honor Logan's memory or just claw for his wealth. She stepped closer to the crowd, her presence filling the room. You failed, all of you. Trevor laughed, nervous now. Test. What is this, a game show? Come on, you can't be serious. But his voice wavered as Ivy's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small remote. Logan isn't dead, she said, each word deliberate. He's alive, and he's been watching you this whole time. She pressed the remote and a monitor on the wall clicked on. There, in a dimly lit room, sat Logan Thorne. 42, lean with dark hair with gray, his blue eyes sharp as ever. He leaned back in a chair, his expression calm but unyielding like a judge weighing souls. The camera feed was live, the time stamp ticking in the corner. April 15, 2025. 10:32 a.m. The room exploded in gasps, shouts, disbelief. Preston stumbled back, his tie askew. Clara dropped her phone, the screen cracking on the marble. Gerald's wife clutched his arm, whispering, "No, it can't be." Lillian's pearls snapped, beads scattering across the floor. Logan's voice came through the properties. "My life," Logan said as a guard took her arm, her cracked phone slipping to the floor. The crowd's gasps were a chorus of awe. The room electric with the thrill of justice. Ivy stood beside Logan, her silence a crown as Clara's digital throne crumbled, her cruelty to Ivy now her undoing. Gerald's wife tried to argue, her emeralds flashing, but Logan cut her off. "You called my wife classless. You don't get to stay." They left, heads bowed. The crowd thinning as guards cleared the room. Lillian's scattered pearls crunched underfoot, a fitting end to her pride. When the doors closed, only a handful remained. 3 people who'd stayed silent, who hadn't laughed or sneered. Sarah Ellis, the nurse from the wedding video, now older, her eyes wet with relief. Michael Reed, the librarian, who nodded to Ivy when she entered, recognizing her quietly. And Anna, a groundskeeper who'd offered Ivy water before the reading, no questions asked. Logan turned to them, his voice softer now. "You saw her. You didn't judge that's what family means." He looked at Ivy, his hand finding hers again. "You were right about all of it." Ivy's gaze lingered on the empty chairs, the spilled champagne, the broken pearls. "I didn't want to be right," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I wanted them to be better." She faced the 3 who remained, her eyes warm now. "Thank you for seeing me." Logan squeezed her hand, his voice low for her alone. "You're more than they'll ever understand." She smiled, small but real, and leaned into him, her cardigan brushing his sleeve. The room was quiet now, the vultures gone, the truth laid bare. Ivy didn't need the money, the estate, the empire. She'd never wanted it. She'd wanted Logan alive, whole, hers. And now with the world stripped down to its bones, they stood together unshaken. The hills outside glowed green under the April sky, and the camera blinked off. Their work done. If this story hit you hard, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and hit that subscribe button for more stories that cut deep and lift high. Your support keeps the truth.